Did someone from catering wander in? That was the first thing my sister's father-in-law said when he saw me. Not hello. Not welcome. Just that loud enough for the nearby guests to chuckle politely and pretend they didn't hear. I stood there, calm, in a simple black suit, no designer label in sight. He thought I was out of place. But the truth was, I had never been more exactly where I was meant to be. I wasn't there to toast the happy couple or rekindle old family ties. I came for something else. Something cleaner. Precise. So when a man in uniform walked through the doors and said, "It's an honor to meet you, Senior Agent Camila," the sound of a glass shattering on marble echoed louder than any applause. And that, finally, was the entrance they never saw coming. I learned early that being quiet made people uncomfortable. At family dinners, while my younger sister Ashley sang pop songs off-key for attention and my uncles clapped like she was on stage, I'd be sitting quietly, observing. I didn't mind the silence, it gave me space to think. But in our family, silence was mistaken for weakness. "Camila's just not very expressive," my mother used to say with a tight smile, as if apologizing for my existence. Ashley got a pony for her 10th birthday. I got a book about marine animals. Not that I ever complained, I actually loved that book, but it wasn't about the gifts. It was about how every small thing Ashley did got framed in gold, while I was background noise. She was the spark. I was the supportive older sister, the one they forgot to include in group photos until someone pointed it out. By middle school, Ashley had dance recitals, matching bows, and full video montages. I had a box of perfect attendance certificates that no one ever looked at. My father once told Marite, after I won a statewide science competition, that maybe I should smile more so I wouldn't seem intimidating. By high school, I stopped expecting anyone to clap. While Ashley talked about cheerleading and boys and TikTok fame, I was busy reading about encryption, analyzing political case studies, memorizing global affairs down to the hour. But it didn't matter how much I knew. At home, intelligence didn't shine unless it sparkled on the outside. At one Christmas dinner, Ashley brought a boy home who couldn't remember the difference between Belgium and Berlin. My mother leaned in and whispered, "He's got great presence. You could learn from that." Presence. That's what they thought I lacked. What they didn't understand was, I was building something invisible on purpose. While Ashley posted selfies in glittery dresses, I learned how to make a paper trail disappear. While they laughed at memes, I studied government contracts and tracked underground networks. No one asked what I wanted to be, not really. Because the truth was, they didn't expect anything from me. That was their biggest mistake. I kept my dreams small on the outside. Maybe something in admin, I'd say, just to shut them up. Meanwhile, I was being vetted for federal service, while my own family thought I worked front desk at a shipping depot. I didn't need them to clap. I needed them to underestimate me. And they did. Over and over again. Until the day one of their own, the man who thought I was catering staff, would realize I was more than just Camila the quiet one. I was someone whose decisions reshaped regions. Someone who answered calls not from family, but from national security hotlines. I left home the day after my high school graduation. No dramatic fight, no teary goodbye, just a silent breakfast, a ride share to the train station, and a duffel bag filled with cash I'd saved from tutoring jobs no one in my family had ever asked about. Ashley was still asleep, curled in pink satin sheets, the family's little jewel. I didn't leave a note. What would I even say? Thanks for the crumbs? College wasn't an escape, it was a staging ground. I enrolled in a low-profile but deeply funded federal track program under a pseudonym. There, I was taught by analysts who never showed up on Google. My textbooks had redacted pages. My classmates didn't give real names. We were being trained to disappear, not to impress. It was exactly what I'd been waiting for. While Ashley was being tagged in engagement photos and spa trips, I was learning to write with my left hand, speak Russian in 5 dialects, and navigate surveillance systems without triggering a single alert. It turns out, if you grow up being overlooked, you develop a rare skill, the ability to vanish on purpose. They called it neutral presence, the ability to exist without provoking suspicion. I called it Tuesday. My whole life had been a dress rehearsal for this. By 22, I was fluent in 5 languages. By 23, I was deployed under deep cover in a financial fraud cell tied to international defense corruption. By 24, I had briefed someone 2 heartbeats away from the president. And still, at Thanksgiving, my mom would forward Ashley's baby shower photos and ask why I hadn't settled down. Settled down? I had dismantled a paramilitary network in rural Colombia using only a burner phone and a weather satellite. I didn't say that, of course. I replied with a thumbs-up emoji and went back to decoding a manifesto hidden in a cargo manifest. That's how it always was. My wins were silent. Her mediocrity was broadcast like gospel. But I wasn't bitter. I was busy. I learned to say things like, I work in logistics, or I'm in risk management, which technically weren't lies. They just weren't the whole truth. Because the whole truth would never fit in the narrow image my family had of me. That version of Humiliated, one who blended into the edge of family photos and didn't sparkle, she was gone. In her place was someone trained to assess threats before they made headlines. Someone who didn't need to be invited to the table because she already had eyes on every chair. What my family didn't know wouldn't hurt them. But what one man said to me at a wedding, loud enough for everyone to hear, that would change everything. People think spy work is glamorous. Sleek suits, fast cars, secret meetings in Paris cafes. In reality, it's a lot of paperwork. A lot of sitting in unmarked buildings with stale coffee, watching encrypted feeds from basements in countries no one talks about on the news. The missions come fast, but the world rarely sees the hand behind them. That was the version of me no one in my family knew existed. To them, I was still Camila who does something with spreadsheets. That's what my aunt called it at a birthday party I didn't attend. Oh, you know Camila, she's quiet, real smart, something with spreadsheets. She wasn't wrong. I just didn't tell her those spreadsheets were used to monitor illicit weapons transfers through Eastern Europe. I lived in Arlington, 5 blocks from the Pentagon, in an apartment with blackout curtains and 0 personal decor. My neighbors thought I was in tax law. I let them. Because the less people know, the safer everyone is. There were weeks when I'd be in 4 countries and appear on no airline manifest. I had clearance levels that meant I couldn't even tell other agents what I was working on. I once received a Christmas card from my own handler addressed to Jane Doe. I laughed and burned it. That was the job. It wasn't that I didn't have a life, it's that my life couldn't be shared. While Ashley was live streaming brunches and hashtagging every latte, I was reviewing satellite footage of a flagged convoy in the Syrian desert. I had no selfies, no soft launch boyfriend, no group chats. Just rotating codenames and a Glock I kept in a drawer behind a false panel. And that was fine. Until the wedding invitation arrived. It came in a cream envelope with gold script, addressed, of course, to Ms. Camilla Jensen. Not only the wrong spelling, but not even the right surname. A careless error, one that wouldn't have even fazed me years ago. But now it felt surgical, like I'd been erased from the family registry. The invitation arrived 6 weeks late. There was no call, no text, just a formal card and a dress code so pretentious it made me laugh. I tucked it in a file marked low priority. I wasn't planning to go. But then, a name caught my eye. Franklin Talcott, Ashley's future father-in-law. A retired admiral turned defense consultant who'd once testified before Congress about maintaining America's strategic supremacy. I'd seen his name before. On white papers, on briefings, on files marked confidential. And suddenly, it wasn't just personal, it was interesting. Because I knew something he didn't. The girl he'd sneer at as catering staff was the same agent who'd once approved a black site operation he swore never existed. And if fate wanted us at the same wedding? Well, I never ignored orders, not even from the universe. I wasn't attending the wedding out of sentiment. This was reconnaissance. Before I even RSVP'd late, of course I started a quiet dig into Franklin Talcott's background. Not the publicly available stuff. Not the press releases or LinkedIn blurbs filled with naval medals and buzzwords like service and strategy. No, I wanted the files that lived behind firewalls and red tape, the kind that required dual clearance and a digital handshake just to view. It didn't take long. Franklin Talcott had enemies. Most men with unchecked power do. His military service was polished, yes, but so was the marble mask hiding the cracks. Underneath the accolades were audits, discrepancies, rumors, whispered contracts with private defense firms that accidentally overlapped with classified operations. He'd played both sides of the linear and gotten rich doing it. But I wasn't there to take him down. Not yet. I just wanted him to remember me. To see me, if only once, without the filter of status and assumption. Ashley probably had no idea who she was marrying into. She never asked questions. Pretty men with sharp suits were her comfort zone. But I knew what Franklin represented. The old guard. Men who ran boardrooms like battlefields. Who could disarm you with a handshake while rigging an entire defense contract behind your back. Men who never saw women like me coming. So I prepared not with speeches or revenge fantasies, but with poise. I selected a dress that wasn't flashy, but sharp. Clean lines, minimal color, military seam precision, enough to be elegant, just enough to be confusing. I knew they'd peg me as someone's assistant. Or someone from catering. That was the point. Let them look at me and miscalculate. That had always been my greatest weapon, their blindness. I ran facial recognition on the guest list using a confidential beta program, cross-referenced every name with government registries, not because I feared exposure, but because I needed the right timing. And then I saw it. Colonel J.R. Alcott. He was scheduled to attend. Pentagon liaison, counterintelligence, a man I'd worked with twice, though he only knew me by code name, C7. He wouldn't recognize my face, but he'd recognize the authority I carried when I called him by his real name. That's when the plan locked in. I didn't need to confront Franklin Talcott. I just needed to stand still long enough for someone else to salute me. The rest would fall into place. Ashley would smile. Franklin would smirk. Someone would joke that I looked like I'd wandered in from a security checkpoint. And then Colonel Alcott would walk through the door and change the temperature of the entire room. I wasn't crashing the wedding. I was entering the battlefield. The Holloway estate looked like it belonged on a wedding catalog, cover-white columns, champagne fountains, manicured hedges trimmed to geometric perfection. It reeked of curated wealth, where nothing was personal but everything looked expensive. I arrived 12 minutes before the ceremony. Just late enough to skip the photo ops. Just early enough to be noticed slipping in. The valet didn't ask my name. The usher didn't check the guest list. They looked me over, hesitated, and asked, "Catering?" I smiled. "No," I replied, handing over the invitation, "just family." The man blinked, then led me inside without another word. That was the first clue. The second was the place card at my table. Camilla Jensen misspelled, again. I was seated in the corner near the ice sculpture, between someone's elderly aunt and a man who coughed into his salad. Ashley had done this intentionally, no doubt. She spotted me during cocktail hour, wearing something frilly and white that screamed suburban royalty. Her mouth stretched into a polished smile. "Camila," she cooed, voice wrapped in social tightness. "I didn't think you'd make it." "You invited me," I said. "Well, sort of," Mom insisted. "Anyway, I'm glad you came. You look so official." "Work clothes," I said simply. She didn't introduce me to her fiancé. Didn't ask what I'd been doing. Just a quick hug and a half step back, like she didn't want her makeup to smudge on whatever it was I represented. Then came Franklin Talcott. He entered like he owned the oxygen. Navy suit, polished shoes, and a smile that looked glued on. Ashley looped her arm through his. "Franklin, this is my sister, Camila." He didn't shake my hand. He barely glanced. Instead, he said with that tone people use to perform confidence. Did someone from catering wander in? A few people laughed, unsure if it was meant as a joke or a jab. I didn't react. I didn't blink. Ashley giggled awkwardly. She's in logistics or security or something real serious stuff. Franklin nodded absently. Important work. Good to have. Logistics. And then he moved on. He didn't know the weight of what he'd just done. He'd spent a lifetime commanding people's respect with medals and legacy. But legacies can be outmaneuvered, especially by someone trained to observe patterns and wait for the exact second to strike. And that second was close. I took my seat, quietly sipping still water while white-draped waiters circled the room with canapés. Everything was so meticulously constructed, from the floral arches to the synchronized music cues. But what none of them knew was that the most carefully constructed lie in that room was me. The quiet sister, the forgettable one. The one they didn't realize had more access to national secrets than anyone on that guest list combined. I checked my watch. Colonel Alcott would be arriving soon. And when he did, this wedding wouldn't be remembered for the vows, or the centerpieces. It would be remembered for the glass that shattered and the face that finally turned pale. The string quartet paused. Forks settled against plates, glasses lifted halfway, conversations dipping into that pre-programmed lull everyone expects right before the toasts begin. I sipped my water calmly, watching Franklin Talcott from across the ballroom. He was holding court, flanked by defense contractors and retired admirals, all of them with the same shade of smug in their smiles. He had no idea. The MC took the mic, beaming. Before we raise our glasses to the newlyweds, we'd like to acknowledge a very special guest joining us tonight. A pause. Franklin's grin flickered. He clearly wasn't informed of this addition. Ladies and gentlemen, the MC continued, please welcome Colonel James R. Alcott of the United States Department of Defense. The door opened, and there he was. Dressed not in full uniform but in crisp civilian formal wear, still unmistakably military posture, too straight, gaze too sharp. He entered alone, cutting through the crowd like a ripple in glass. I saw Franklin freeze. He rose halfway out of his chair, surprised, maybe even pleased. They'd met before. I could see the flicker of recognition behind his eyes. Then Colonel Alcott turned, and his eyes landed on me. His stride shifted. Not toward the front, not toward Franklin, toward me. And when he stopped, standing a foot from my table, he didn't nod. He didn't shake my hand. He straightened and saluted. Not the performative kind, the real kind. It's an honor to see you again, Senior Agent Jensen, he said, his voice carrying across the room. That sound, the first crystal glass slipping from Franklin's hand, shattered across the marble like a gunshot. I didn't stand. I didn't even flinch. I just looked at him, calm. Colonel, I said evenly. Thank you for coming. He lowered his hand with precision. Always, ma'am. I wouldn't miss it. Silence. You could hear someone cough across the ballroom. A waiter paused mid-step, his tray wobbling slightly. Franklin's face had drained completely. Ashley looked like she was trying to swallow her tongue. A murmur rippled through the guests. Senior Agent? Ma'am? What is going on? I let the moment breathe. Stretch. It had weight. It needed to land. Colonel Alcott turned, facing the room. I trust everyone here understands how rare it is to meet someone of Agent Jensen's classification. I advise you treat her presence with the respect it deserves. Then he inclined his head toward me once more and stepped back. I finally stood. Not to speak. Just to let them see me clearly. Camilla Jensen. The woman who'd been mistaken for a server. The woman they had no table for. The woman they'd misnamed, misfiled, misunderstood. I turned slowly toward Franklin. He rose abruptly, trying to regain control. Miss Jensen, Ewell, I had no idea you were affiliated. Affiliated? I echoed. He cleared his throat. With the agency, or departments of that kind. You didn't ask, I said simply. Ashley was beside him now, pale as gardenias. Camila, she said, voice trembling. You never told us. I raised one eyebrow. You never asked. Her mouth opened, closed. Franklin tried again. Senior agent? That's quite a title. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Colonel Alcott had already said enough for me. But then I leaned slightly forward, just enough for only Franklin to hear. You testified before Congress in 2019 about a covert operation in Eastern Europe. He stiffened. I smiled faintly. You mentioned unknown civilian interference that compromised strategic intel. He blinked once. That was me. His lips parted, but no words came out. I cleaned your mess, I said, and you called me catering. The smile vanished from his face. He sat down slowly. Ashley reached for his arm, but he didn't move. Across the room, the MC looked lost, unsure whether to resume the program or crawl under the table. The guests clapped soft, confused, obligatory, a few louder than others, some just stared. I returned to my seat without a word. I didn't need applause. The silence was enough. And as the string quartet awkwardly resumed their song, I picked up my glass and took a single sip. It was warm now, slightly flat. But the taste? Perfect. Franklin approached my table 10 minutes later. He waited for the chatter to swell again, for the hum of forced conversation and soft jazz to return just enough to mask his arrival. But nothing could soften the edge of his expression. It was the look of a man used to being the most powerful person in the room until he wasn't. Agent Jensen, he began, with a smile so thin it could slice paper. I wanted to personally welcome you. Truly an honor to have you here. I looked up, slow and deliberate. The pleasure is mine, I said flatly. No warmth, no invitation. He chuckled awkwardly. That was quite a moment back there. You certainly know how to command a room. I don't need to command it, I said. I just don't need permission to exist in it. That shut him up for a beat. Ashley joined him, clinging to his arm like it might anchor her to something real. Camila? She tried again. Two had no idea you were involved in anything like this. You always kept so quiet. I had to, I replied. No one ever listened when I didn't. She blinked. I didn't mean to offend you, she whispered. You didn't need to, I said. You just needed to keep looking past me. Franklin cleared his throat, clearly desperate to pivot. Well, listen, this doesn't have to be awkward. We should talk. There may be opportunities, collaboration even. My network still has value. I'm sure it does, I said. But I don't deal in maybes. He hesitated, then leaned in, voice lowered. You're not going to use this to embarrass me further, are you? I tilted my head. You embarrassed yourself, I replied. All I did was let you speak first. He blanched. Ashley tugged his sleeve, as if trying to silently beg him to stop talking. He didn't. We're all family now. He tried again. Let's not let formality ruin that. That's when I stood up. Not with anger, not with drama. Just control. I looked him in the eye. I came here because I was invited. Late, misspelled, barely acknowledged but invited. And I showed up with grace. Then I turned to Ashley. You have a beautiful wedding, a new life. I hope it works. I won't disrupt it. Ashley looked like she might cry, but I wasn't offering comfort. I wasn't here for reconciliation. I was here for closure. Franklin made one last attempt. If I may, perhaps we could arrange a meeting. I'd love to understand more about your agency's initiatives. I gave him a smile that didn't reach my eyes. I'm sure you would, but next time, try starting with a handshake. Then I walked away. Not storming, not flinching. Just gone. And behind me, Franklin Talcott stood in silence, surrounded by the wreckage of his assumptions. I didn't wait for dessert. As the room tried to reclaim its rhythm, forks scraping plates, laughter trying too hard, I slipped through the same gilded hallway I had entered from. Only now, they all noticed me. Not a single person stopped me. Not Ashley. Not Franklin. Not even the MC who earlier grinned like he ran the room. I didn't need to stay. My message had already landed quiet, precise, and irreversible. Outside, the evening air was crisp. A black sedan waited at the curb, engine low and steady. My driver, Evan, stepped out and opened the door without a word. He didn't ask how it went. He didn't need to. I slid into the back seat, glanced once through the tinted window. The estate glittered behind me like a theater set, beautiful and shallow. For a brief second, I half expected someone to run out. Maybe Ashley, maybe Franklin, maybe both. But no one did. Because now they didn't know what to say. How do you speak to someone you spent a lifetime ignoring? How do you face a name you erase suddenly to discover it holds more weight than yours ever will? I didn't need their applause. I didn't come for revenge. I came to remind them that erasing someone doesn't make them disappear. It just makes your own sight weaker. They called me invisible for years. But from now on, every contract Franklin signs, every closed-door meeting he walks into, every investor update he scrambles to spin, he'll see my name in the fine print. Senior Agent, Camila Jensen. And he'll remember the day she walked into his family and never once asked to be acknowledged. Only respected.